The agitation for these wage hikes and overtime, double overtime, as you said, it's sort of been happening from January onwards. And then the second phase, it spread to Manesar and then Noida subsequently. But there was no violence in Manesar and earlier. But then we saw cars being burnt and police lathi-charging and a lot of violence in Noida. So what was the differentiating factor between the Manesar protests, which are completely peaceful, and then these protests in Noida, which became violent? Why is this difference?
To begin with, even in Manesar, actually, police has picked up workers and worker leadership and activists saying that there has been violence in Manesar as well. So that's what police is saying. But yes, it's true that there was a difference in nature in the protests. One reason could be, and it's a good question, because the IMT Manesar area has actually seen in the past 1 decade some history of unionization. There have been worker strike earlier from 2005-06 in Honda to big strikes in Maruti and Maruti's vendor manufacturing companies from 2012, 13, 14, which also then spread to other manufacturing automobile companies in that belt. And these were strikes for the right of unionization. And there were some unions that got formed in that period. So there is, there has been space and there has been a tendency to have organized workers' strikes, which is why when strikes broke out in Manesar even this time, the DC office, there's a huge area in front of the DC office in Gurgaon, workers were allowed to come and assemble there. But in Noida, as contrast to that, it is a completely ununionized space.
So there are no union activity in Noida industrial area at all?
Not at all. I mean, not to the greatest extent. So, of course, I mean, there was no way in which workers or, for instance, even the management knew how to deal with it. I mean, what is important here, I would like to add, is the fact that from Noida, what we saw is that what was primarily a labor question was turned into a criminal question by the administration. I mean, it's the Constitution of India which says there is a criminal court and there are civil courts. There is a labor court, there is a labor commission. But say, for instance, in Noida, we didn't sort of hear many statements from the labor commission, from the labor secretary. We are actually hearing statements from the DAM or the SPDCP office. So what is a basically labor dispute was turned into a criminal dispute, and instead of actually creating cases in labor courts, taking the disputes to labor commission, labor secretaries, in the very first instance, police was used to resolve, which is where the problem perhaps starts. These are labor issues, these are valid labor demands. As I said, it's for hike in minimum wages and payment of a double overtime, 8 hours work. The labor secretaries, the labor commissions should have been the first to interfere, not the police.
Yeah, but the administration has justified the use of police and law and order machinery on the grounds that the protests had become violent and therefore you needed some means of force being deployed,
right.
Rapid action force and provincial armed PAC forces were deployed.
Right.
So, but the workers who we've spoken to so far, they claim that their demonstrations were completely peaceful. And external gundas for hire were used deliberately to inject violence so that the protest could be broken up. How credible are these allegations? And is the administration justified in using police because they needed at the end of the day to maintain law and order as well as the argument goes?
True, we've heard those statements and we've seen those visuals also. Definitely workers are claiming that it weren't them. They were bouncers. And this is not new. Even in Manesar before and now in Noida, the workers have claimed that what were actually otherwise peaceful protests and valid, legitimate legal rights, workers' rights that they were asking for. Management has time and again used bounces. This has happened in the past, and we are hearing the same right now in Noida as well. What I would actually like to draw attention is violence is not the first commonsensical thing that a worker would actually do. Because if you see in Noida, so was the case in Manesar, so was the case in Panipat and every other protest that we saw, that these are mostly migrant workers. Mostly, not all, but mostly. They are all contract workers. So they are more aware than anyone else that what loss of employment would mean. We have seen it at the time of COVID. We are again seeing it during the LPG crisis right now. They don't have savings. They don't have a backup in the city. I mean, if they lose job for a week, they go back home. And we have seen those scenes from the railway stations and the bus addas. So doing something which will actually lead to loss of employment and other things is not the first thing that the workers would actually commonsensically do, at least not in this belt, who are mostly contract and migrant workers.
Right. So violence, I mean, it does seem a little far-fetched that it would be a natural resort for workers sort of struggling for a better wage.
Absolutely. So and these should be, resolved through the labor commissions, labor courts. And we have seen that the labor courts in this entire industrial belt, they just simply don't, even if they exist, they don't operate well.
Now, the labor codes are past some years ago, they were notified recently.
Right.
Many even the central trade unions have been speaking out. They launched demonstrations against these 4 labor codes. So what has been the issue, what has been the impact of these labor codes on the ground? I mean, we spoke about the labor commissioners. If they were not really effective before these labor codes, there were so many, like maybe 100 laws, which is too much apparently to enforce and to look into. But now you've got these 4. Is there any change at all in terms of how the labor commissioners are looking at enforcement of some kind of a fair or a level playing field for the labor?
The 4 labor codes have actually been the greatest disappointment and loss for the Indian labor class and Indian working class, to be very honest. As I said, before the labor codes, things were very good. It was hardly the case. One would actually, what our analysis would be is that the labor codes were actually, I said this before as well, were actually legalizing what was happening for the last 15 to 20 years or a bit more.
What was happening informally and
what was happening informally, extra-legally, illegally.
Do you know, you spoke earlier about how the entire Noida industrial belt is not unionized. So what does it take to help a group of workers in an industrial belt organize so that they're able to form a union, which is still a constitutional right?
Absolutely. Something that I said earlier as well, that the problem was that there was no mechanism that was put in place to resolve what was essentially a labor dispute, which was not a criminal dispute to begin with. Section 3 of our Industrial Relations Act, which was drafted long back, says that there should be workers' committees, which should be a tripartite mechanism where there should be representatives from the company, representatives from the state and civil management, and there should be representatives from the workers. And there should be space for collective bargaining, apart from right to unionize, etc. All of these are being jeopardized. You hardly see workers' committees being allowed by companies these days. If you are on contract, the percentage of permanent workers is reduced to 1 to 2% of the total workforce, even in the formal sector. So, there is a large section of informal sector. And second of all, even in the formal sector, the workers are informally recruited. So overall, what we are seeing are basically contract and informal workers, not even contract and informal workers. If you see the whole Manesar belt, a lot of production is happening by people who are young men being hired in the name of student trainees. So they are not even being called contract workers. They are being said that you are NEEM trainees, you are student trainees.
Which means you get lesser pay?
Which means you might not get any pay for that matter. Okay. Or you get lesser pay, way lesser pay for the same amount of work that a permanent worker should be done. In some of the manufacturing units, what has happened is that they are enrolling for some of the courses, and the government is actually paying the company saying that basically you are giving trainee because they are enrolled under a government skill development scheme. So the government is actually paying the company, and the company is actually extracting work, production out of the worker in the name of a student.
But this is presented as a big service for the youth, because you're training them, giving them skills, and which was supposed to be, the government is claiming it is taking credit for skilling India.
Right. But as I described the situation, basically they are producing for the company products which they are selling in the market and gaining their profits. So where is the question of wage coming? There is labor involved in it. Second of all, a lot of de-skilling actually has also happened. I mean, for 2 years, for 1 or 2 years, if you're doing a particular kind of work continuously in a production unit, you're basically not learning 10 other kind of work which institute you should be doing. So after 2 years, when you're actually not 22 but 24, the other company is saying that, look, you have been only doing that one particular work and you're not trained for doing anything else. So why should I give you a hike? I'll actually give you a reduced pay. And actually, there are other 22-year-olds to do that work. So there is de-skilling actually happening.
So you're saying that the Ministry of Skill Development's skilling programs for India's youth, which is giving money to companies to employ these youth as studentships,
yeah,
it's actually causing them to be less employable because they're getting de-skilled over time.
Exactly. And we have seen that in Manesar. I mean, it's a very different story. I think we need an entire different interview on this.